Well, this is Tony Ryan talking to you from Nhulunbuy, Arnhem Land. What I'm going to try and do in the next 10 minutes is reduce the most complex part of Australia's history, that is from 1973 to today, to about 10 minutes. Most Australians can feel change coming. Few know how or why. Most Australians realise that the prosperous and happy Australia of old is gone. And most Australians understand that government lies to us pretty much about everything. So, what's going on? In the 25 years following World War II, Australia was the most prosperous nation on earth. Every worker had access to full-time jobs. Every worker was entitled to paid annual holidays and paid public holidays. Every worker had access to sick leave and long service leave, and every family was able to afford a car, or even two. Today, 1 in 4 Australians has no job at all. 1 in 4 workers has only part-time work, and most young people have no job of any description. So what happened to Australia? The most prosperous nation on earth, and now one of the most destitute in the Western world. The cause of this catastrophe can be summed up in 2 words: free trade. Free trade, we can define that as freedom to exploit, means that ruthless foreign corporations can use slave labour and hostile subsidies, for example from the Chinese government, to undermine the goods they sell us and drive our manufacturers broke. Traditionally, 80% of Australian workers' jobs flowed from manufacturing. Also lost was much of our, and perhaps up to about 90% of our domestic food production. We lost 4 million full-time jobs between 1973 and to today. So, who is the free trade lobby? Who are these people that have changed this country without ever consulting the Australian people? The answer is a global alliance of investment bankers led by the Rothschild and Rockefeller dynasties, who also own most of the major oil, chemical, munitions, war machine, agribusiness and pharmaceutical corporations in the world. The free trade lobby, also known variously as the globalists, one world government, Wall Street, or to a lot of kids, the Illuminati, created the United Nations. They own the UN building in New York and almost all media corporations. So this is your Hollywood movies, your TV stations, your radios, and especially nearly all of the newspapers in the world. In this way they control public information, all the information you obtain, and this you get it from the internet independently, which of course they hate. These corporations also fund the 2 major political parties, in actual fact now fund the 3 major political parties. And they do this partly by funding the parties directly, or the politicians directly, and partly by using the media to favour the party that's saying what they want to hear. Anyone who criticises the globalist policy is viciously attacked by politicians, by celebrities who are owned by these people, and by their media. Recent victims have been Donald Trump, who was portrayed as a monster. In fact, all he said, he was opposed to free trade because he knows that 1 in 20 Americans lost their jobs to it. He opposed the big bankers because he knew that Wall Street was behind all this. And he said he liked someone like Russia's Vladimir Putin because he noticed that Vladimir Putin is supported by 82% of his people and has been for 20 years. He's the most popular politician on the planet. Someone like Donald Trump looks at that and says, the guy's obviously got some good points here somewhere. He's also the only politician in the world with a youth following. Anyone who criticises the power of these people will probably lose their job, their business, their political party, or their position in government. So this is a global position. Australia is one of the countries most damaged by globalisation and free trade. Our nation was targeted for one reason, and especially targeted because we're the only country in the world that could be independent. We have all the resources we need to be self-sustaining. We don't need to trade with anyone. When we do trade, it's to make some people rich. We don't need it. Trading actually is inflationary. Just imagine if you sell a piece of steak in Australia, $8 a kilo, and you're selling it overseas. You're not going to sell it for less, you're going to sell it to the top bidder. So you sell it for $15. That then drives the local price up to $15. That's why the meat prices have been rocketing in the last year or so. We don't need to trade. We have everything we need ourselves. If Australia closes its borders, it would be the most prosperous nation on earth within 7 years. And let me give you an example. I analysed the Bowser cost of fuel and found that if we produced our own oil in our 8 existing but mothballed refineries, our own light sweet crude, which is as good as anything in the world, including Venezuela, and if we removed the tax, our Bowser price would be 12 cents a litre. I've been challenged on that, more notably by the American who runs the US Business Intelligence Review, Lyndon LaRouche, who also is the man behind the Citizens Electoral Councils all over the world. He challenged it, did his own study, and he found not 12 cents a litre but 25 cents a litre, to which I say, who cares? Okay, half the figure. I'm happy with 25 cents a litre, but you get the impression. Can you imagine Australia with 25 cents a litre at the Bowser, the effect this would have on the cost of production and industry, on transport across this vast country? It would give us a major advantage over almost all other countries in the West. Now that's been competitive. Now, how could we get our country back? How could we get policies that the people want? It's called people power. And in fact, by listening to this video now, you are engaging in people power. Once a majority of Australians understand that the true nature of the problem of globalisation and Australian prosperity requires an Australian solution, supported by Australians, we have our country back, we have our prosperity back. This is real democracy, government of the people, by the people and for the people. That's what we need, and that's what we need to call for. This is Tony Ryan saying thanks for listening.